Ahoy sailors, I'm here aboard Sea Sprite. It's been quite a while since I gave you an update on the ongoing refit. I think I'm a good 5 years into the 6-month refit of this boat, but since we returned in April, I've been aboard just about every day, getting a lot of work done. So hopefully this is the year. I keep promising you that, but let's give you an update of what we've done and where we're going. So up here in the V-berth, we've opened up this forward section. You really couldn't access this. The water tank was there, but there's a beam that runs fore and aft here that supports the rest of the V-berth, the actual boards on which the berth sits. Had to remove that to get the water tank out. I have painted all these spaces with Total Boat epoxy bilge paint. I still need to get in there and paint the anchor locker. I'm also going to install a carbon fiber tube in that hole there. The builder just opened that hole up so that water would drain out of the anchor locker. I think it'd be better to have a little tube fared in so that you can protect that wood, even though it seems to be in good shape.
And we've removed through holes there. You can see where the sanitation hoses come from the head. Over here on the starboard side of the V-berth, you can see we have some drawers and a little storage locker. I'm going to get rid of those drawers. I'm going to take an idea from James Baldwin, Adam Voyages.
So yeah, take an idea from James Baldwin, and let's 86 these drawers and open that space up for more storage. So we have this hatch over here on the port side. We can open up another one here, right where I have the old hatch cover for the port side sitting. We can open another hatch there so we can access that space. So we removed most of the plumbing here in the head. Well, we removed all the plumbing, the head, everything. Painted behind the hull behind the lockers there. There will be a new countertop here. Might you reuse the sink? So I think an appropriate size sink. Different fixtures. Still thinking about which head. I mean, we had a Jabsco manual head. They're ubiquitous. If they fail, you can buy a new one for $200. Also thinking about how we plumb the shower sump. Before it just drained into the bilge, which is not ideal. So those are thoughts that I'm having about the head. Here in the salon, the major change will be that we'll be adding a cabinet behind the drop-down table. I have a new old stock Cape Dory salon table cabinet that fits perfectly in the space where the current table resides on the bulkhead. And the trick will be just fitting that cabinet to the bulkhead and then fashioning an appropriate drop-down table to the cabinet. That's the biggest change in here. We have replaced the coach roof, the interior coach roof walls, which were a veneer that had been damaged over the years with leaking port lights. We've replaced that with a laminate, which brightens up the boat considerably. It also highlights the how dingy the coach roof is, the ceiling, the headliner, if you want to call it. That's a hard headliner. I have run a couple of test patches there with cleaner, and 1000 grit wet sanding. And it seems like wet sanding is the way to go. So hopefully at some point we'll wet sand the entire headliner and bring it back to an appropriate color. Over here on the port side, there were two lockers. This settee slides out on that track right there and becomes a berth. And you can access two lockers. Once you slide the settee out, you can access two lockers underneath it, forward and the center. There was no access to this space here at the aft end of the berth. And because of the way the slide out berth works, you couldn't access it from the top. So we went ahead and opened up the sidewall here, and now we have access in there.
creating a tremendous amount of additional storage space, which is always a premium on a small sailboat. And we've done taken a similar approach here under the galley stove. This was previously closed, and now we have a space where we can at least stick a skillet or a pizza pan or some utensils. For the stove itself, I'm 99% sure we're going to go with an electric induction cooktop. You can buy a Force 10 electric marine stove with an induction cooktop and an electric oven. We very rarely bake. We have found a microwave to be tremendously useful on a boat. So I may have a custom stove / microwave gimbaling apparatus built that will fit in this space. More to come on that and more thought required. We're definitely going to be changing the countertops. I've been toying with several different options, obviously Corian, granite, quartz, marble, stainless steel. It's kind of interesting from a traditionalist perspective. A lot of classic boats had stainless steel galleys. There's pros and cons to each. Another upgrade here in the galley will be going to a single sink instead of a double sink. It'll be larger, and there'll be inserts that allow us to gain greater utility from that single sink. And if I can ever get this faucet mount out, the plan would be to shift the sink outboard just slightly and install a more modern faucet in this area with a pull-out sprayer, etc. Why do that over here? Well, first of all, it's pretty compact. You don't have a lot of clearance back here. Plus, once the sink's in, you can't access. It's very difficult to access the underside of any faucet fitting. So by installing the faucet in this area, it's much easier to access the fittings if you need to get in there. We'll also plan to have a foot pump. You can see where there was a foot pump in the past, a foot pump and maybe a hand pump as well. The foot pump could be for saltwater rinse or bringing fresh water, vice versa. That hand pump, we had a hand pump in the past. It was for draining the water out of the icebox, and we will have to consider how to do that. It's still a requirement. You're still going to get water in the icebox from condensation, etc. So we have to think about how we get that water out, whether we drain it over to the sink or whether we drain it just into the bilge. But yeah. One of the nice things about the Sea Sprite was a very large icebox. And I understand from other owners who have cut this out that it's actually quite well insulated for a boat of this vintage. So the plan is to convert this to a refrigerated space. And most likely we'll be installing a cold plate here on the aft side. Could be put a bigger one right here on the front. Obviously, just depends on how much cooling we think we need. So that's a big improvement. In the past, obviously, we put block ice down in there, and that would last for a couple days. But over time, ice gets expensive if you have to keep loading it up. So that's going to be a big addition. While the Sea Sprite doesn't have a dedicated nav stay, effectively the top of the icebox is your chart table. The VHF was mounted up here underneath the deck. So right there, you can see there's the red light for looking at your charts. I don't know if I'll keep that or not. Whoops. And thinking about maybe building a cabinet in this area, flush, say, with that rail, to more elegantly install VHF and, say, some other electronics. I have to think about that. Not sure if I need to do that. Certainly don't need to do that, but it might be nice. Someone might say, well, why not put it right behind the icebox? But that's part of the galley cabinets. You can see the sliders there. We don't want to give up that space. It's galley storage on this boat is pretty limited. It will improve with that cabinet for the salon table, but that's going to remain dedicated galley storage. What is nice is you've got this area here. You can see the two holes there. Those are for 12-volt outlets.
there's a bit of space behind that board where you can mount some, you could mount battery monitor or control, but it's at a slanted angle. It's not as easy to access, you know, if you're standing up, but that is a useful space. And you've got the same thing over here above the galley, but of course above the galley, don't know what you really want to put there. You can see here the old switch panel. Now all the wiring has basically been removed. And currently my thinking is that we're gonna go with a digital switching approach, which dramatically reduces the amount of wire runs you have to install. And one of the benefits is that you basically get rid of this DC side of the breaker panel. There's no physical breakers with digital switching. It's all controlled through the computer, through brain. And so what you'd have here is a touchscreen like a Servo GX, or even a chart plotter can be programmed to basically act as the breaker panel and turn on and off all of the electrical systems on the DC side. It doesn't really make sense to do it on the AC side. We've got such limited AC runs, basically inverter charger, water heater, and outlets. So we're gonna do a lot of research on that digital switching, but it makes a ton of sense when you talk about having to run individual power lines for each system back to the breaker or to bus bars behind the breaker. With digital switching, you would run one power line down the length of the boat along with a signal cable to individual control boxes. So say we would run a power line down the starboard side of the boat, we'd put a node control box, an Empire bus, an XT box, probably inside that locker there. And from that point, you run the individual cables, say for the mast lighting or for the forward lighting in the V-berth, or say the wash down pump, macerator if you had one, shower sump, those sort of things. So it makes a ton of sense, particularly since we're going to have quite a few additional electronic systems on the boat that weren't anticipated in 1984. Here in the engine compartment and in the cockpit lockers, we've painted all of that with Total Boat epoxy bilge paint. And as soon as the new fuel tank arrives, we'll install that. Then a Beta 20 engine will go in. And we're still considering how we lay out all the various systems that we'd like to install on the boat. There will be bulkheads, and you can see the little grooves there where bulkheads sit to separate the cockpit lockers from the engine compartment, running gear, all of that. Don't want anything falling down in there that doesn't belong. As you can see, the cockpit's a bit of a mess in a storage unit. This is the old propane locker. This is the propane locker, which I've removed and discovered that by removing it, and there's a tremendous amount of additional space that could be utilized for systems or storage. Considering how to access that space, of course, could access it from this cockpit locker here, but it would also be great if we had another access point, maybe a locker lid or some sort of access to get down in there. The other thing you'll notice is that this is where the steering pedestal was installed, and we're going to go with a tiller conversion. So this will get closed up and glassed over. You can barely see that plate back there, but that's where the rudder post, where you can access the rudder post, and the tiller will be installed in that area. The decks have been entirely recored where they needed it, and I've undertaken some initial sanding to sand down the old non-skid, the molded in non-skid, which was a nice non-skid. It's unfortunate, but obviously in areas where we had to remove the top skin of the glass, That's all gone, so we have to sand everything smooth and obviously ferret, and then before we apply paint and then new non-skin. So that's a bit of a mission. We've started on that. All of this is smooth now. Got some question marks here around the mast partner. You can see these cracks. Sanded those and they feel smooth, but they're still a little bit deeper. I'm gonna have to open those up with a Dremel, I suspect, and see what happens there. Considering whether I should lay down some more glass in that area just to give it more strength. Interestingly, you can maybe see a square pattern there, and it looks like at some point the builder did something different there. Probably that is probably marine plywood around the mast collar, not balsa, for added strength. But clearly there was a different approach taken to that part of the deck than the rest of the deck. And there she sits, where she's been for 5 years. They tell me that very soon she'll be in this building. This is Phipps Boat Works, and they're going to undertake some of the more complex joinery and boat right tasks. I'm very excited about that. I've been chasing Buster, the owner, for months to give me a slot in the building where we can really just concentrate and get a big chunk of the refit done. So stand by for that.